Bride left by best friend, but a drone uncovers a shocking secret. The sun shone brightly over the sprawling garden, where Emma could almost hear the fluttering of white silk and the hushed whispers of flowers dancing in the gentle breeze. Guests settled into their seats, eyes glistening with excitement, cameras poised to capture every moment of her dream wedding. Emma's heart raced with anticipation. Today, she would wed Jake, the love of her life. But as she stood at the altar, an electric tension filled the air, and the scent of jasmine suddenly turned sour. Everything changed in an instant. Just as the officiant began to speak, Emma turned to catch a glimpse of her best friend Lily. But Lily wasn't there. The absence hung heavy and cold. Emma felt a tightness in her chest, like a rubber band ready to snap. A faint murmur rippled through the crowd, eyes darting nervously, speculation brewing. A drone whirred to life overhead, its camera capturing the festivities, the bright whites and bold hues, shots brimming with hope. But then the device took an unexpected dip, zooming in on a secluded corner of the garden where Emma spotted Lily. She seemed frantic, her generally cheerful demeanor traded for one of despair. Beside her stood Jake, looking unusually tense, shoulders drawn tight, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Their expressions told a silent story that chilled Emma to her bones. "The wedding can't happen!" Lily shouted, her voice a dagger that pierced through the day's happiness. Emma's world tilted. Blood rushed in her ears, panic thrumming as she tried to understand what was happening. Lily turned and bolted, a silhouette against the bright backdrop of the wedding, leaving a chorus of gasps and murmurs. Emma's heart plummeted. Disbelief wormed its way into her mind. Just then, the drone, still capturing events from above, recorded Lily's parting words to Jake. "I thought we were supposed to be together. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore." The crowd gasped. Heads turned sharply. Emma felt heat wash over her face. Betrayal hung like a storm cloud, suffocating and wild. Were those feelings still alive between them? She felt sick, a mix of anger and confusion twisting her insides. Her hands trembled. What deep secrets had unraveled between her two closest loves? As chaos erupted, guests stood stumbling over each other, some gasping, others fervently whispering. Family members nearby, faces drawn in shock, shot glances that blended surprise with sympathy. Questions buzzed like angry bees. How could this happen? Why was her best friend abandoning her? And just like that, Emma found herself at a crossroads, torn between loyalty to Lily and a gut-wrenching need for truth. She felt adrift among well-meaning but bewildered guests. How could she confront Lily? Would Jake have answers? What family histories lay buried beneath layers of illusion? With her heart racing and confusion swirling, Emma found herself standing in the eye of the storm, raw and exposed. Her world hung in the balance, hanging on the threads of unspoken secrets and unfulfilled promises. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I have to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube canceled their subscriptions without warning. Just check out the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And while you're there, leave that like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching the channel from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. Just as the crowd began to settle into whispers, caught in a whirlwind of speculation and disbelief, Emma felt a tremor run through her body. The drone continued to hover, its lens focused on the heartbreak unfolding in the garden. But it wasn't just Lily and Jake's tense standoff that held her attention. It was the sudden flicker of movement from the corner of her eye that shattered the fragile moment. A figure dashed from the edge of the gathering, uninvited, unrecognized, running right towards Emma. The crowd parted like a sea, gasps echoing through the air, confusion etched on every face. Emma squinted to make out who it was, heart pounding like a drum. And then she saw him, Mark, her ex, the one she hadn't spoken to since their messy breakup, the one she buried deep in her past. He skidded to a halt in front of her, face pale and eyes wide, as if he'd just stepped out of a nightmare. The festive air evaporated, replaced by an electric charge of tension that prickled Emma's skin. "Emma, you need to listen," Mark breathed, glancing nervously between her and the drone above. The crowd hung on his every word, the silence deafening. "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here." Emma's voice shook, fists clenching at her sides. Her emotions swirled like a tornado, fear, anger, disbelief. "Please," he continued, desperation etched into his features. "It's about Jake, about what's really going on. I didn't want to ruin your day, but you deserve to know the truth." Panic lodged in Emma's throat, a sick lump making it hard to breathe. "What truth? What are you talking about?" Before Mark could respond, the drone swooped lower, almost as if it were eavesdropping, capturing the weight of the moment. He breathed heavy, searching Emma's face for understanding. "He was never going to marry you, Emma. He was just using you to cover something up." Gasps filled the air again, quick and sharp, like a knife through silence. Emma shook her head, heart racing, mind swirling. "Using me for what?" "Please, just—" Mark hesitated, looking behind him, as if expecting someone to join. "You need to know. Jake is hiding something huge. I found out last week. Something about a—" Before Mark could finish, a piercing scream cut through the air. It came from Lily, who had reappeared, eyes wide with panic, stumbling towards them. "No! Stop!" she cried, collapsing at Emma's feet, hands clasped tightly. "You can't listen to him! He's lying!" The crowd was now a living, breathing entity of confusion and chaos. There were frantic whispers, questions flying, and horror painted across faces as Emma oscillated between Mark and Lily. Jake stood frozen, panic on his features, looking less like the groom and more like a trapped animal. "Tell her the truth!" Mark shouted, his voice cutting through the noise, hand pointing sharply at Jake. "Tell her everything!" Emma felt the world tilt beneath her, reality crumbling. What didn't she know? What had her entire life been built upon? In the midst of it all, a police siren echoed in the distance, growing louder. The moment hummed still, thick with unanswered questions. Chaos just a breath away. Emma felt tears prick her eyes as she stood in the eye of the storm, the weight of secrets pressing heavy on her chest. What had Jake been hiding? What was the truth her best friend fought to protect? In that fractured moment, standing amidst the wreckage of her dreams, Emma realized she was about to uncover something far more devastating than just betrayal. She needed answers, and she needed them now, before it all spiraled out of control. The air pulsed with tension. The crowd's breaths held tight in their throats. Emma stood, heart racing, the words, "Tell her everything," clanging in her ears. In that moment, something shifted in Jake. His expression went from panic to resolve, like a wall behind him crumbled. "Dema he began. But before he could finish, the unmistakable sound of screaming pierced the air. It came from the garden's entrance. a high-pitched wail that froze everyone in place. Heads turned, eyes wide, breaths caught in collective horror. Through the thrumming silence, a woman stumbled forward, drenched in what looked like blood, her dress torn into shreds. She fell to her knees, gasping, wild eyes darting around like frightened animals. The dark red fluid painted her hands. With every frantic motion, it splattered onto the pristine grass and white shoes of horrified guests. "Help me, please!" she cried, voice raw, desperation spilling out. Emma's heart sank. Who was she? The woman's face was smeared with both panic and recognition. "Emma!" she choked out, her voice a whisper of familiarity. From the corner, Mark moved backward, his own face paling as he caught sight of the newcomer. The chaos suddenly shifted from Jake and Lily's drama to this new horror. "What happened?" Mark stammered, fear mingling with confusion. "Jake, you need to get away from him!" The woman's voice trembled, but her gaze held fierce determination. "He's not who you think he is!" A collective gasp swept through the guests. A rolling wave of shock crashing over the gathering. Emma felt the pull of panic deep within her chest, gripping her heart, making it hard to breathe. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, feeling the rising tide of chaos grasp at her sanity. "Emma, I'm here because I had to warn you." The woman struggled to pull herself up, blood smearing across her cheeks. "Jake is connected to everything. The accidents, the lies. We were all part of a game." "A game?" Emma repeated, her mind racing. The words hung in the air like a bad omen, cloaked in an unspeakable dread. "Yes, people are in danger." She looked around the crowd, fear etched on her face. Emma followed her gaze, dread pooling in the pit of her stomach. The buzz turned to hushed whispers. Shock sprawled across their faces. "There's something he's kept hidden, and I'm not the only one who knows." Suddenly, Lily grasped the woman's shoulders, desperation evident, but then recoiled as if burned. "You're lying. You have no idea what you're talking about." Emma could feel the world tilting again, a dizzying fall into an abyss of betrayal. "What game? What are you two hiding from me?" The room dimmed under a thick veil of uncertainty, and reality twisted into something monstrous. The drone, still hovering, captured the insanity unfolding, recording every jarring moment. Then, without warning, Jake, his expression now dark and resolute, stepped forward. "Enough!" he barked, the commanding tone slicing through the chaos. "You don't understand what you're saying. You're not safe." The woman's face paled, knowing something deeper, something scarier. "I know what you did," she spat, her eyes narrowed with fury. Another wave of gasps swept the crowd, their murmurs quickening, filling the air with alarm. Emma felt the ground shake beneath her as she held on to the moments, desperately trying to piece together the puzzle that had just cracked wide open. The alarming realization kicked in. None of them knew what kind of man Jake really was. Who had they trusted? Emma felt the room closing in, the world pressing against her. She needed to know. She had to uncover the truth, even if it meant diving into the darkest corners of her heart, the past stretching out behind her like a shadow. But deep down, there was a question gnawing at her mind. What had Jake really done to provoke this chaos? What hidden darkness was lurking behind the facade of her perfect life? Would any of them survive the truth that was now clawing its way to the surface? The air crackled with tension, but something deeper was churning beneath the surface. Emma stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. The woman knelt before her, bloodied and frantic, shaking with fear. The crowd whispered, their confusion morphing into something darker. "Help me, please," she begged again, and Emma's chest tightened. "You have to listen to me." Before Emma could process the chaos, Jake stepped forward, his face twisting into anger. "Shut up!" he roared. His eyes flared dangerously, a sharp contrast to his previous panic. "You're ruining everything!" The woman looked up at Jake, her expression shifting from fear to a burning resolve. "You think I'm afraid of you? You're the one who shouldn't be scared." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Emma felt herself swaying, caught between the weight of her love for Jake and the dawning horror in the woman's eyes. "Emma, listen to her," Mark urged, stepping closer. "She knows what's happened. You can't turn your back on the truth." Just then, a distant echo reverberated through the garden, police sirens growing closer. The sound reminded everyone of the ticking clock, an urgency infecting the air. Emma's mind raced. What the hell was happening? "Tell me," she demanded, her voice rising above the murmurs. "What's Jake hiding?" The bloodied woman took a breath, glancing at the guests, then back at Emma. "He was in on it. The accidents, they were no accident." A stunned silence fell, every word hanging in the air, heavy and suffocating. Emma faltered. "Accidents?" Her head spun. "What accidents? The car crash 2 weeks ago," the woman continued. "That was meant to silence me. And then the fire at the old mill. His connections run deep, Emma. He's involved in something dark." Jake's face blanched, but anger twisted into his features again. "That's enough! You don't know what you're talking about!" Emma's gaze darted back and forth between them, her heart pounding louder. "What? What don't I know?" "I had to protect you," Jake shouted, desperation leaking from his voice. "It was for your own good." "No," Emma cried, rage bubbling to the surface. "You don't get to decide what's good for me." "What did you get?" "Me wrapped up in?" The woman rose, her body trembling. "He's been using you, Emma, holding you as a shield while he hides from those who want him to pay for what he's done." A chill ran down Emma's spine. "What have you done, Jake?" The air thickened with anticipation, the tension snapping with every heartbeat. Just then, as if on cue, the drone circling overhead started to tilt, crashing to the ground. The collective gasp from the crowd echoed through the garden, shock and confusion flashing across every face. Before anyone could react, the sound of multiple footsteps thundered toward them. In rushed a group of officers, uniforms crisp, badges shining. Emma's breath caught. The chaos that had been hanging in the air transformed into an unfathomable dread. "Hands in the air! Step back!" they shouted, pointing at Jake. The reality hit like a blow. Emma's vision blurred, pieces of her world crumbling away. Jake's eyes widened, the bravado dissolving into sheer panic. "Emma," he said, almost pleading. But it was too late. She couldn't turn back now. She had to know the truth. As officers surged forward, she steeled herself. The woman's warning echoed in her mind. Whatever had been hidden, whatever legacy of lies Jake carried, it was coming to light now, and it would shatter everything they had built together. But then, from the back of the crowd, a shadow moved, unnoticed by everyone except for Emma. A familiar face stepped forward, eyes locked onto Jake. Emma's breath caught in her throat. It was her mother, and she was not supposed to be there. "Jake," her mother called, voice steady, but laced with something deeper. "We need to talk about the past, now." With those words, the storm inside Emma boiled over, and her heart raced with the dawn of new, horrifying revelations. What history connected her mother to Jake? What hidden truths lay buried in their past? And what impact would they have on Emma's future? Emma felt a whirlwind of emotions crash over her as her mother stepped into the chaos. The bloodied woman on the ground, Jake standing frozen. Both were mere shadows in a whirlwind that now centered on her mother. The stranger, who suddenly felt so familiar, yet so distant. "Mom?" Emma's voice cracked, disbelief cascading through her like ice water. The crowd whispered, and the tension crackled, sharp as a snapped twig. "Listen to me, Emma," her mother urged, stepping closer, eyes darting from Jake to the woman. "This isn't just about your wedding. It's bigger." Just as the urgency thickened the air, the woman, still kneeling, gasped, clutching her side. "She knows. She was there, Emma, the night everything happened." A loud explosion rang out, shocking everyone into stunned silence. It came from the direction of the garden's edge. The sound didn't just disrupt the air, it shattered it, fraying the edges of reality. Guests staggered backward, faces painted with fear. "What was that?" Mark yelled, inching closer to Emma, eyes wide, desperate. But Emma barely heard him, her focus locked on her mother, who seemed to pale slightly. "You knew something was coming, didn't you?" Emma's voice trembled, each word punctuated by the chaotic thundering in her chest. "Not like this," her mother whispered, eyes darting nervously toward Jake. Before anyone could process it, another figure emerged from behind the trees, a tall man clad in dark clothing, his face obscured, agitated movement sending another wave of dread washing through the crowd. He held something metallic, glinting dangerously under the bright wedding decor. "Stay where you are!" the newcomer shouted, voice booming. He scanned the guests with eyes filled with fury, locking onto Jake. "You thought you could run away from your past?" The air thickened, choked with confusion and fear. Emma exchanged glances with Mark, whose expression mirrored hers, shock morphing into sheer terror. "Who are you?" Lily managed to stammer, though her voice quivered. "Someone who knows the truth about this charade." He pointed accusingly at Jake, each syllable charged with a heavy weight. "You can't hide anymore. You're not the man you pretend to be." Emma's heart raced, pounding so fiercely that it felt like it might burst. Jake's facade was cracking. She felt a disorienting rush of heartbreak seep in, mingling with the growing tension. "What haven't you told me?" "Emma, just stay back," Jake shouted, panic flaring in his eyes. But it was too late. The mystery was unraveling, threads snapping one by one. The man took a step forward, and without warning, the woman scrambled to her feet. "You think I'm scared? I know what you did." "I will end this now," the stranger yelled, gripping the metallic object tightly. Gasps rippled through the gathering at the threat, hanging heavy in the air. "Wait," Emma cried, desperation casting her voice high. "What do you mean? What did Jake do?" The man's gaze flickered. "He's involved in trafficking, Emma. The accidents were cover-ups. He's not just playing games. He's playing for the lives of people." Stunned silence enveloped the crowd, shock watering their eyes. Outrage twisted through Emma's heart, and betrayal sliced deep through her chest. "Traffic?" Her voice barely escaped her lips, the pieces of her world crumbling into chaos. Jake's expression hardened, anger morphing into a twisted mix of defiance and desperation. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Stop!" Emma shouted, needing the truth, needing clarity. The tension gripped her insides. Everything she thought was real began to dissolve into nothing. The ringing silence shattered once more as the sirens outside grew louder, blending with her racing heartbeat. Would she uncover the entirety of Jake's darkness? And what did her mother know that could link to all this terror? In that charged moment, everything hung in the balance. The truth threatening to snap and separate them forever. Emma's heart plummeted. She had to know who her mother was meant to be in this fractured tale. What role had she played in keeping these dark secrets? But as she opened her mouth to demand answers, the world spun, and a blinding flash of light erupted from the man's metallic device, engulfing them all. The blinding flash of light erupted, illuminating the chaos around Emma. Her heart raced, pounding loudly in her ears as shockwaves rippled through the crowd. People screamed, ducked, and stumbled back, faces frozen in disbelief. "Get down! Get down!" someone yelled. But the confusion rose like a tidal wave. Emma's vision blurred, but she kept her eyes locked on her mother. "Mom!" she shouted, desperate. The light dimmed quickly, revealing a scene frozen in time. The metallic device in the man's hands had transformed into a weapon. At least that's what everyone thought. The mother's eyes widened in horror. "Emma, no!" she screamed. But before Emma could process her movement, lunging toward her mother, her world shattered. In an instant, the man pulled the trigger, unleashing a sound like thunder that echoed through the garden. The blast rang out, not directed at anyone, but sending a shockwave of fear crashing over everyone. In that moment, everything changed. The blast wasn't a weapon. It was a smoke grenade. Thick, swirling clouds of gray enveloped them, spreading a bizarre odor that stung the nose. Emma coughed, stumbling backward as the smoke blotted out reality. Panic swirled like a tempest, every breath a struggle. Through the fog, Emma glimpsed Jake's face, a mixture of horror and guilt etched across his. "Features!" "I didn't," he tried to shout, but the thundering chaos drowned his words. The crowd erupted in disorder. People shouted and ran, trying to escape the unknown threat that loomed above them. Emma felt disoriented, lost in a storm of panic. The smoke rolled around her, swallowing sound and sight. She reached blindly, searching for something, anything familiar. Mark's hand found hers, squeezing tight. "This way," he urged, leading her away from the blaring sirens that now filled the air. But just as they stumbled forward, Emma thought she heard something, a voice, sharp and clear, slicing through the chaos. "You don't understand. It was a setup." It was the woman, still partially shrouded in smoke, urgency filling her voice. "You need to know the truth." But the words felt muffled, lost to the growing cacophony. "Where are you?" Emma shouted, panic knotting in her stomach. Her chest tightened, breaths coming in short gasps. Mark dragged her through the haze, every gasp mingling with her mounting fear. Then, a sudden commotion to her left caught her attention. A figure, hazy but recognizable, staggered into view. Lily, her face soaked with tears, wild-eyed and frantic. "Emma, we have to go! Now!" But why? Why now, when everything felt like it was collapsing? Emma's thoughts whirled. Suddenly, through the jumbled voices, her mother's voice cut in again, more determined, more assertive. "They want revenge, Emma. It was never just about us." A flood of memories washed over Emma. Years of betrayal, secrets woven tight around their lives. What did her mother mean? What had she actually known? As the smoke thinned, just enough for Emma to see, she spotted the newcomer again. Hadn't his words meant that Jake was dangerous? But then he stood cowering, visibly shaken. Something shifted within him, a flicker of vulnerability that swallowed up the bravado. Suddenly, a piercing sound followed. A high-pitched beeping that escalated quickly, sending chills down her spine. It wasn't just smoke. It was a countdown. "Get down," Mark shouted again, as everyone dropped to the ground. Emma could only watch in horror as the smoke thickened, suffocating what little hope was left. What had she walked into? Would the truth emerge from the smoke? Or would this chaos consume everything she held dear? Emma's heart raced with unanswered questions, desperate for clarity. What else had been hidden? What would happen next? The smoke thickened everywhere, swirling like a living thing, swallowing the garden whole. Emma felt her heart pound painfully in her chest. Every second stretched, and her breath came in shallow gasps. The beeping intensified, a relentless countdown echoing in her ears. "Move!" Mark shouted, urging her forward. The chaos enveloped them, people stumbling like spirits lost to confusion. "We need to escape!" But just as they took a step, another voice rang out, sharp and piercing. "No! Don't run!" It was the woman, feeling the urgency as she clawed through the haze toward them. "Listen to me!" Emma's mind raced. What is happening? What did Jake do? She tried to find clarity in the storm, caught between fear and the desperate need for answers. Suddenly, the metallic device the man had been holding crackled alive again, and in the next moment, an explosive burst erupted from within. The smoke shattered, dissipating rapidly, revealing the figure standing at the edge of the garden. But it wasn't just anyone. The crowd went dead silent. As a woman stepped forward, Emma's breath hitched. It was her grandmother, the one she had fought lost years ago to a distant past. The woman Emma had only heard stories about, always kept like a ghost in a family album. "Mom?" Emma's voice trembled with disbelief. "How?" Her grandmother's eyes were fierce, yet pained. "I had to come. You're in danger, Emma." She stepped forward, her presence commanding the chaos. A wave of whispers coursed through the crowd, a mixture of shock and recognition. Emma felt the ground beneath her shake. What was going on? Why hadn't anyone mentioned her grandmother was still alive? Before she could process it, her grandmother looked directly at Jake, a deep-seated fury framing her features. "You thought you could hide? You thought you could erase our family's history?" Jake's expression shifted, disbelief mingling with dread. "I didn't think." "Didn't think?" her grandmother interrupted, voice rising. "You put my family in danger. Do you realize what you've done?" Emma felt raw, torn between the startling reappearance of her grandmother and the man she was about to marry. Everything she thought she knew cracked like glass. "Emma!" Mark shouted, pulling her close as people began to whisper again, tension rising. "What is happening?" The countdown continued, each beep like a hammer driving nails into her mind. Emma focused on her grandmother, seeking answers. "What do you mean? What history? What did Jake do?" But before her grandmother could reply, the dark-clothed man lunged forward, his intentions menacing, desperately reaching for Jake. "You can't escape your past!" In that instant, the world slowed. Emma felt like she was trapped inside a wild storm. Her grandmother stepped in front of Jake protectively. "No!" she yelled. "You don't understand." Bam! The force exploded overhead, a blinding flash of light, momentarily illuminating the chaos. Emma shielded her eyes, a scream tearing through her, and then silence. Complete and utter silence. For a moment, time stood still. The smell of smoke mixed with fear, thickening the air. The crowd paused, suspended in mid-action, faces frozen in horror. Emma blinked away tears. What had just happened? When she opened her eyes again, Jake stood at the center, breathless, lost in turmoil. But beside him, her grandmother, eyes wide with a mix of fear and sorrow, raised a trembling hand to his face. "Why, Jake? Why?" The tension crackled again, backfiring emotions. Emma's heart sank deeper, a sense of foreboding looming. What hidden horrors lay behind her grandmother's painful gaze? As the crowd began to murmur, more forcefully this time, Emma's heart raced. Questions piled high like a mountain, spinning in her mind. Who was Jake really? What had he dragged them all into? Emma felt the weight of the moment suffocating her. Her grandmother's fierce gaze bore into Jake, just as doubt swallowed her hope. "What did you lie about?" she whispered, voice trembling, eyes scanning the crowd. Every guest stood transfixed, caught in a web of uncertainty. But before Jake could respond, a crackle of energy surged through the air, swirling like a live wire, snapping her attention back to the dark-clothed man who still loomed nearby. He raised the metallic device again. "You don't know how deep this goes." His voice was low, filled with something sinister. "Enough!" Jake shouted, desperation leaking through his bravado. "You can't do this here. Not now." Emma sensed an impending threat, her heart racing in sync with the escalating tension. "What does he know, Jake? What's going on?" But the man stepped forward, eyes alight with madness. "It's not just about traffickers or revenge anymore. This is about power." The words hung in the air, laced with a dark promise. The crowd collectively gasped, whispers erupting into frenzied chaos. Mark gripped Emma's arm tighter, his voice barely cutting through the clamor. "We need to get out of here." Emma nodded, but her gaze fell back to Jake, who looked pallid, breathing heavy. She was torn. He had been the love of her life, yet shadows flickered across his face. Shadows of guilt, fear, and dread. "Tell her everything, Jake!" The bloodied woman screamed, the urgency in her voice wrapping around Emma like a lifeline. "You have to tell her." Before Jake could say anything, the dark-clothed man lunged forward. Something sparked, dazzling and final. An explosion ripped through the garden, a deafening roar that sent debris tumbling and bodies sprawling. "No!" Emma's scream pierced the air as she stumbled backward, the ground shaking beneath her feet. She shielded her eyes from the blinding light, heart racing. When the dust settled, Emma blinked against the haze, vision blurred. In that fraction of chaos, everything shifted. The man lay on the ground, still, but there was something else. Something darker behind him. Emma squinted, bewildered, as the truth unfolded like a nightmare. Jake stood, but it wasn't just panic in his eyes. It was something more primal, an unfamiliar glint that twisted her stomach. "It's too late," he murmured, voice trembling with an edge of betrayal. Suddenly, the officer's commands filled the air, frantic, desperate. "Get back! Stay away from him!" "What's happening?" Emma gasped as she looked at Mark, whose face twisted in shock. But even he couldn't grasp what her heart was beginning to realize. "Jake!" she breathed, heart racing dangerously fast. The air felt thick, charged with a billion secrets. "What did you do?" And then the real horror unfolded. A loud crack shattered the confusion. From nowhere, another figure emerged. A woman, eerily familiar, stepping into the flickering light. She tossed dark hair back, eyes ablaze with a chilling familiarity. "Surprise, everyone!" she called out, voice dripping with venom. "Who are you?" Emma stammered, stomach dropping. This woman, the resemblance was unmistakable. "I'm your sister, Emma." The world tilted. Emma's entire being froze. How could this be? Her sister? A violent roar of disbelief erupted from the crowd. confusion churning into chaos. Her heart pounded. Jumbled thoughts clashed like thunder in her mind. No, that's not possible. But the woman's smile twisted into something sinister. Oh, how little you know. Each word dripped with malice. He's been keeping the truth from you, from all of us. In that moment of revelation, Emma realized the ground beneath her feet was not just shaking, it was collapsing. Everything she thought she knew clattered down like a house of cards, leaving bewilderment and shock in its wake. What else had been hidden? What did she not know? Emma! Jake reached for her, anguish mixing with dread. But Emma stepped back, disbelief washing over her like a cold wave. The truth held her captive, 1,000 questions curling inside her. Could she trust anyone now? Would she ever understand? Emma's heart sank deeper as the words spilled from her supposed sister's lips. "I'm your sister, Emma!" It felt like a cold wave washed over her, chasing away the warmth of the sun. Shock twisted inside, tightening around her chest like a vice. Everyone around them shifted, eyes darting back and forth between Jake and the woman with wild resilience. "What are you saying?" Emma managed to choke out, struggling to piece it all together. It can't be true." The woman smirked, an unsettling confidence radiating from her. Oh, it's all true. Jake knew. He tried to keep it hidden, but there's no escaping now. "Emma!" Jake stepped toward her, desperation evident in his voice. "Please, I didn't know she would show up. I swear I never wanted to hurt you." But Emma shook her head, the frantic thumps of her heart echoing in her ears. Doubt battled with every memory she had of him, the sweet smiles, the shared laughter. Were they all lies? Before she could reply, a sudden loud crash erupted behind them. Everyone turned, eyes wide, as a massive tree branch, heavy and old, toppled from above, barely missing the crowd. Chaos erupted again. People screamed and scrambled, trying to escape the danger. "Get down!" someone yelled. The sound of panic roared like an unforgiving tide. In the midst of it all, Emma lost sight of her grandmother, her heart racing, her instincts screaming for her to run. "Mom!" she shouted in vain. As she spun, trying to locate her family, someone grabbed her arm tightly. It was Mark. "Come on! We need to go!" His eyes were frantic, fear etched on his brow. But before they could move, the dark-clothed man shoved past, marching toward Jake. "You think you're safe? You've cost us everything." His voice simmered with fury, the threat palpable. Emma watched in horror as Jake's expression morphed into something she had never seen before. It was primal, savage, almost like he was being backed into a corner. "You don't know what you're talking about!" The man lunged forward, just as Emma felt a pull. At her thoughts, what had Jake done? Suddenly, a hidden rage seemed to ignite within him. He grabbed the nearest object, a decorative sword from a nearby display, and brandished it. "Stay back!" he yelled. "I won't let anyone hurt me or Emma." A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Emma's pulse thundered in her veins as chaos escalated. Mark pulled her tighter. "We need to get out of here now." But before Emma could move, a loud crack shattered the air. A gunshot, followed by screams and shouts. Emma's stomach dropped as reality twisted into a horrifying mess. She spun to see the dark-clothed man falling to the ground, a shocked expression frozen on his. "Peace." "What just happened?" she whispered, disbelief clawing at her heart. Crowds panicked, some ducking for cover, others running. Jake stood, breathless, the sword still in hand, eyes wide with shock and confusion. "What did I do? I didn't mean to." But Emma's mind reeled. "Did you shoot him?" A cold sweat broke over her. "You were not supposed to." Before she could process his answer, the sirens grew louder, and chaos spun tighter. The crowd swayed with confusion and fear. But the strangest part was Mark, pulling her away but never looking back at the mayhem. "Emma, listen to me," he urged, dragging her to a side path. "I have a plan." "Plan? What plan?" But her voice couldn't hide the confusion. Just as uncertainty clenched her gut, the air shifted again. She felt something, an unmistakable shift, a revelation buried deep within her. "Emma?" Mark hesitated, his eyes darting nervously as he spoke. "I have to tell you something too. Something about me." But the words were lost as Emma caught a glimpse of the dark-clothed man. He stirred, eyes flickering open, and in that moment, everything changed. A knife twinkled in his hand, and her breath caught in her throat. "What on earth?" Emma's heart raced. Just then, he turned, locking eyes with her, and his lips curled into a cruel smile. "You still don't get it, do you?" Time slowed, every breath a leaden weight. She felt lightheaded as the world spiraled and crackled with confusion and dread. Emma's heart thundered, and she whispered, "What don't I understand?" In that instant, her world tilted. The clouds of smoke churned back, hiding the truth, leaving Emma desperate for clarity, desperate for answers. And as the man lunged, knife glinting, she realized nothing would ever be the same. Emma's heart, the fragile thread of hope in the midst of chaos. "Stop!" Emma shouted, voice breaking as she stepped forward. Mark held her back, his grip tight and protective. "Don't hurt anyone." The dark-clothed man hesitated, surprise flickering across his face. But it was brief, fading quickly into rage. "You don't understand, do you? You're just a puppet in their game." He gestured wildly at Jake, who looked frozen, caught between defense and denial. "Enough!" Jake roared, brandishing the sword with desperation. "I won't let you take her!" Emma felt her breath catch, fear surging in her chest. "Jake, don't!" Her voice trembled, the weight of the moment palpable. What was happening? Did she want him to protect her? Or was he the real threat? The atmosphere charged like a live wire, crackling with tension. Then, sudden silence fell over the chaos. It pierced the air, heavy and suffocating. Every eye was on Jake, the crowd holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "Emma," Jake whispered, his gaze pleading, "trust me. I've made mistakes, but I'd never hurt you." Before Emma could answer, he charged toward the dark-clothed man. "You don't have to do this. We can end this together." The man's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just walk away? You think love can save you?" Their movements were swift, a dance of adrenaline and determination. The crowd started to back away as the confrontation spiraled, the tension overwhelming. Then, without warning, a loud bang echoed through the garden. Startled cries erupted through the gathering. The dark-clothed man clutched his side, eyes wide, sinking to the ground in disbelief. "What just happened?" Emma gasped, blinking in shock. A figure emerged from the haze, another woman, dressed in police uniform. "Drop the weapon," she shouted, hand on her gun, her voice commanding amid the chaos. Everyone stood frozen, fear rippling like an electric current. As the smoke cleared, Emma saw a hint of red staining the man's figure. "Get him!" Jake shouted. "He needs to be stopped." The police approached swiftly, surrounding the downed man. For Emma, everything felt surreal, like a nightmare she'd never wake up from. She turned to her grandmother, who nodded with resolve. "I'm here for you, Emma," her grandmother said softly, stepping forward. "We'll figure this out together." Finally, grappling control over her racing heart, Emma let the tears spill. What do we do now? What happens next? A clamor of voices erupted as the officers secured the scene, administering first aid and taking statements. Amid the chaos, Jake stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "I never wanted any of this," he murmured. Emma met his gaze, the sorrow reflected back. For every lie he'd kept, there was a truth yet untold. "Then tell me the truth, Jake," she demanded, her throat tight. "Now." Just then, the shattered puzzle pieces began to form a picture in Emma's mind. The hidden truths, the dark game, and the layers of betrayal that wrapped around their lives. Would their love survive? Or had everything been irrevocably shattered? As the sirens faded in the distance, Emma reached for Jake's hand, needing to feel something real. "Whatever happens, we face this together. Right?" He nodded solemnly, eyes serious. "Together." But in the back of her mind, a flicker of doubt loomed. The truth would come out, it always did, and with it, the weight of their choices would crash down. As Emma turned to face her family and friends, the air seemed to shimmer with uncertainty. Friends whispered frantic questions, shadows of fear fretting their brows. How would they recover from this disaster? And just like that, Emma realized that their lives would never be the same again. Now was the time for truth, to uncover the secrets woven into the fabric of their lives. As the camera drones circled above, capturing the aftermath of chaos, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their story was just beginning. But there it was in the depths of her heart, a question echoing louder than any other. Would she ever find peace? Would love win out in the end against all the darkness that had spun so tightly around them? And at that moment, she knew one thing for certain. You must subscribe now, so you don't miss out on the next exclusive story, diving deeper into the chaos and lives of Emma and Jake. Smash that like button to support the channel and feed the algorithm. It helps so much. Flood the comments section below with your reactions, theories, and predictions about what comes next. And don't wait. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know the shocking outcome. Your support makes this community thrive. Let's uncover the truth together.